Just want to let everybody know we're running a few minutes late. Today we're running on Clay Cooper time.
So CCT.
We're going to start making our meeting times posted 10 minutes before they're really going to start in anticipation of having a full board. And for the media, that's ha, ha, ha. Oh, we have media.
Thank y'all. But wait, you and Jason arrived at the same time? Who? Jason? You guys hit your ride?
Oh, yeah. Oh. Okay. Y'all ready?
We will now call the meeting to order. If you would, please follow me with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under Madam Clerk, would you do a roll call, please?
Benton, Denham. Here. Cooper.
Here.
Milton.
Here.
Rodriguez.
Here.
Howden.
Here.
LeBlanc.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you. And on our agenda, we'll start off with a presentation from Jeff Matthews, the Police Department, our 2021 annual report. Welcome, Chief.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor and members of the board. Today, it is my honor to present the Police Department 2021 annual report. Our employees worked hard last year providing quality public service to our residents, business community,
Would you speak in, just to make sure everybody online can hear?
business community, and tourists. Our report highlights their great work and provides details on our policing philosophy and value statement, department achievements, performance measures including workload and crime, code enforcement, animal control updates, property and evidence management issues, community outreach, community engagement initiatives, grants and donations, and finally, looking at 2022 and beyond. The report is 32 pages, so today I will only hit the highlights. Each of you have the full report in front of you, and we will post the entire 2021 annual report on the department's webpage alongside our 2020 annual report this afternoon. Let me start by addressing our biggest challenge last year, staffing. Law enforcement across the country has been hit hard with resignations and retirements. Regionally, staffing continues to be a struggle. Area agencies are all focused on staffing. A recent conversation with one of my peers from a larger agency, I learned his agency is down 17 professional staff members on top of double-digit officer vacancies. We're all focused on staffing. Just a refresher on our policing philosophies. We embrace the principles of procedural justice. Procedural justice is a body of research that found citizens are more apt to partner with us and work alongside us when we exercise these 4 pillars in all of our actions and decisions. The pillars include fairness, that we provide just treatment to all the persons we contact, impartiality, that all of our actions are judged to be without bias, transparency, that we openly share data when it's legally possible, and voice, that we solicit feedback and listen to our community's policing needs. Let me bring your attention to our vision and values statements. The vision part right in the middle. Our mission, vision, and value statements are all grounded on 3 basic characteristics: service, integrity, and accountability. This slide documents the recruiting challenges we continue to encounter. Last year, we processed 60 officer applicants and hired just 8 officer candidates. We hired 3 police trainees for the January 2022 Police Academy. They graduate in June. Last year, we hired 2 police officer candidates midway through their academy. They're working the streets today. And 2 others, and the others were a rehire and lateral entry officers. Hiring qualified dispatchers is an even bigger challenge. Although we hired 3 dispatchers, we lost some to other opportunities. We recently hired 2 new dispatchers that are in training today and are finishing up a background investigation on another. If we're able to hire this other candidate, dispatch vacancies will all be filled. Here is a historical look at our dispatch operations. Remember, we dispatch all police and fire operations. 10 years ago, 2011, we increased our dispatch staffing by 1 dispatcher. Today, we have the exact same number of dispatchers. The bottom table charts dispatch workload over the past 10 years. As you can see, our dispatch staff stay busy. We continue to experience increases. During the 2020 pandemic, we topped 35,000 calls for service. Last year, a little over 38,000 calls for service. This table charts all dispatch, police, and fire calls. As you can see, overall dispatch calls increased almost 8%. Police calls, they were slightly down, and I'll defer to Chief Martin to discuss fire service calls at a later date. 2 years ago, we launched a Dial 911 campaign to encourage citizens to dial 911. We no longer post a non-emergency line. Last year, 911 calls increased 25% over the previous year. That's exactly what we're striving for. As you can see, our PSAP answered to 20,049 911 calls last year, whereas Taney County's public safety answering point answered 23,707 total calls, 3,000 more than we did. We're encouraging the public to dial 911 when they need public safety assistance. All calls, including 911 calls, are answered and prioritized by our dispatch staff, just as they did with the old non-emergency line. But today, we're better able to track 911 calls and identify callers through the 911 system. We also benefit from the 911 campaign as the county's 911 tax receipts are determined and distributed by the terminated 911 calls to the PSAP. Again, we're encouraging citizens to dial 911 when they need any police, fire, or EMS. The bottom table shows all of our PSAP incoming and outgoing phone calls. Last year, our staff handled almost 106,000 incoming and outgoing phone calls. Before I introduce this slide, please allow me a few minutes to remind everyone of the most complex and challenging investigation in our department's history. Last May, our community was shocked to its core when we learned that Crystal Buell and Richard McMahon were killed behind a local restaurant. That terrible crime strained our community's sense of safety and security. Historically, we have very low violent crime. Our last homicide was in 2016. As I stated, Branson has very few violent crime, and most are relational, and the suspects are quickly identified and apprehended. This homicide was much different. Our entire team, officers and professional staff, worked tirelessly to identify the suspects. We worked with our regional, state, and federal partners, and over time developed probable cause needed for the arrest warrants for both suspects. Ultimately, we arrested one in Florida and the other one in Boston. Both were extradited to Taney County and will soon stand trial for that offense. Last December, we were finally able to share that information with our community. Now let's discuss this slide's content. In January of 2021, the FBI completed the move away from the 1930s era Uniform Crime Report to the National Incident-Based Reporting System, or NIBRS. The hierarchical UCR reporting system only counted the highest crime in a criminal episode, whereas NIBRS counts all crime offenses in a criminal episode. The UCR model contained Part 1 and Part 2 offenses. Part 1, the higher offenses. Under UCR, we only reported out on the Part 1 offenses, but we tracked Part 2, the lesser offenses, internally, just didn't report them out. Similarly, NIBRS has two different reporting categories, Group A and Group B offenses. We post all Group A offenses and Group B offenses that occur during a Group A offense. All other Group B offenses are not reported to the FBI, but we track them internally. Remember, there are no comparisons between UCR data and NIBRS data. UCR and NIBRS do not align line to line for a clear and clean comparison. In NIBRS, Group A offenses, you will see narcotics offenses, simple assaults, and weapons offenses. In past years, under UCR, these were Part 2 offenses and not regularly reported to the FBI in our formats. That being said, you can already see that we will see clear differences in the way we report crime in our annual reports. At first glance, it may appear we're experiencing crime increases, but in actuality, we're not. Now let me draw your attention to the top of the slide. As you can see, last year, we recorded 1,574 total NIBRS offenses. That's all reported Group A crime and Group B crime that occurred during a larger Group A offense. I know that's confusing, and I can explain it further if I need to. Now let's discuss the Group A offenses. Listed for you are most of the Group A offenses. This list is not all-inclusive, but does include all major categories of crime. Let me bring your attention to the assaults. NIBRS classifies all assaults as Group A offenses, whereas UCR only classified aggravated assaults as Part 1 offenses. Again, at quick glance, it may appear we had significant increases in assault offenses, but under the 2020 UCR Part 1 offenses, they contained no simple or domestic-related assaults. They only included aggravated assaults. When we compare our 2021 assaults against 2020 UCR Part 1 and Part 2 assault offenses, we're actually down.
Excuse me, Chief.
Yes, sir.
For clarity, what I think I just heard you say was, when did NIBRS take effect? January of this year?
For us, January of 2021.
2021, okay. So is it fair to say that the reported crimes that we're all told about under the UCR, the old regulations, we reported X, and now because the reporting changed to include other offenses, what it may appear that we've had an increase in crime when actually we haven't, solely based on the different reporting system.
Exactly. What we're trying to do with NIBRS is track incidents of crime compared to the old UCR, which said, I'm only going to record the highest level of offense in a crime episode. UCR Part 1 is what we reported since the 1930s. It contained basically 8 big high-level offenses. And as you can see in the Group A offenses on this slide, there's many, many more than 8.
Yeah,
So I think with NIBRS, what we will see as a city, we'll get a clearer picture of all of our offenses. And this time next year, I'll be able to give you a year-to-year comparison
Yes.
of just NIBRS data. But right now, I can't.
Yeah, I just wanted the community to know that when they see these larger numbers, it's not, oh my gosh, our crime has gone up, right?
Right.
It is based on just the reporting process.
We're tracking it differently.
Yeah, and that's for the media also. And before you move on, I don't want to put you on the spot, but there was a community outcry when we had that murder last year.
Yes, sir.
I understand that you, as the chief, had very valid reasons of why you were not able to share and keep the community. The community kept asking to be updated. What's going on? What's going on? Would you take just a few minutes and share some of the legalities of that, or the expansive investigation, and try to explain why, to our community, why you were unable to give updates on that?
Sure. As we investigate those type of crimes, our investigators, like Detective Arnett sitting in here with us today, he's very close to the details of that crime and has guilt knowledge that only he and the suspect would know, right? And then as we go up our chain of command, I have little or knowledge of that, so I'm not inadvertently passing that out. We release information as a team based on where we are in the investigation. Sometimes that includes knowledge that the detectives and their command staff know that they're intentionally not sharing with me, but they're telling me, Chief, give me some more time, because we may have an identity, we may have a location, and that if I come out publicly and make a comment, we lose that ability to now find that suspect. Sometimes, Mayor, on the other side, we're at a point in an investigation, we're at a dead end. And then we release what we can. And in this investigation, you'll remember, after several months, we got back with the media and we said, here's a snippet of video.
Yes.
Maybe somebody can help us identify this person. We got some tips on that, and then ultimately, our team, along with the Highway Patrol and our federal partners, identified that one piece of information that sprung the whole thing open. So I wish I could say we could do it in 30 minutes or an hour like we watch on TV, but as you can tell, this offense occurred May 29th. We were finally able to release the details of the arrest December the 31st.
Are you at liberty to share the other federal organizations that were involved with this
Sure.
particular
Sure.
crime?
Regional partners, we were working with the Taney County Sheriff's Department, the Coroner's Office, and all of our regular partners. At the state level, the Highway Patrol, they gave us 2 detectives immediately. They were working alongside us for months. Federal partners, we were working with the U.S. Secret Service, and just a reminder to the board, Detective Arnett is actually assigned, we have an agreement with the U.S. Secret Service, and he carries those credentials and has the ability to access everything that the Secret Service has access to help us. We also worked with ATF, the FBI, U.S. Marshals Service, to help us in the extradition and the arrest and all that stuff as well. So all the federal partners, and we have regular contact with those guys weekly.
I appreciate that, and I just wanted the community to know that I shared your frustration with, gosh, what's going on? What's going on? Have we just dropped the ball, or nobody's doing anything on this? But after the case was solved, or is being solved, there was really valid reasons of why the chief of police was, his hands were tied with sharing information. I just wanted the community to be aware of that. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you for that opportunity to share that. It's frustrating from our standpoint as well, because we're working as hard as we can to bring justice back to the community and to those victims' families, and knowing that we couldn't go to the public and say, here's where we are.
Yeah.
It's frustrating at times. The lower right table catalogs Group A offenses: crimes against persons, crimes against property, and crimes against society. And the number of those specific crimes within those categories are listed there. Again, assault totals appear high, but last year we recorded 35 aggravated assaults. The year before, we had 57 down to 35. When viewing drug offenses, remember, most drug offenses in the past were Part 2 offenses and not regularly reported. As we move through our data points, you will see our trajectory is headed in the right direction. In the past few months, there have been many virtual discussions about Branson crime throughout social media. In fact, there was a news article that said Branson was experiencing crime increases similar to many other cities across the nation. As your police chief, I'm here to tell you that's not the true crime picture. Here is a 5-year comparison of major crimes against persons. We've already discussed the May homicides, which were horrible crimes and strained our community's sense of safety and security. I understand statistics are raw data and factor no citizen perception of crime. You pay me to reduce real crime and manage the fear of crime in our community. We as a department continually engage our residents to address the fear of crime and remain committed to our community policing and geographic accountability policing model. We understand the need for valued police-community relationships and know we cannot succeed without engaging our community and fostering relationships. The bottom table shows UCR Part 1 crime between 2017 and 2020. All UCR Part 1 crime trended down during that 4-year period. That downward trend represents a 32% reduction in Part 1 crime. Tracking our 2021 major crimes, we continue that downward trend as depicted by the red trend line. I believe you will agree we're trending in the right direction. I highlight this slide to share one of the most difficult and time-consuming investigations we handle. Death investigations require considerable resources and manpower, often including our volunteer chaplains. Two specific points I want to emphasize are the overdose death and the medical and natural deaths. Last year, we experienced a 26% increase in overdoses, but a 17% reduction in overdose-related deaths. In 2020, we responded to 54 overdose calls. Last year, that number grew to 68. The second item is the medical and natural deaths. These investigations are investigated the exact same way we investigate homicides until the coroner rules the death medical or natural. Again, they are extremely resource-intensive and time-consuming, but necessary to ensure we're always seeking justice in our community. During the height of COVID, IT assisted us in developing an online reporting platform. We continue to research online reporting capabilities to increase our efficiencies. However, our current platform is filling the gap. As you can see, last year, we received almost 400 online reports, never dispatching an officer. These reports were mainly requested for insurance purposes, and each one of these are included in our NIBRS data that we shared earlier. In January, code enforcement transitioned to the Community Development Division, but they were with us for about 2 years. Last year, they experienced a very busy year. Let me draw your attention to the re-inspections. Our municipal code authorizes a lodging re-inspection fee when code enforcement officers must conduct secondary inspections. Last year, we started tracking and billing these fees. I want to pause just a minute on this slide. Last year, our property and evidence manager, Tammy Jones, pictured here, accomplished something most property managers will never accomplish. See the 1-to-1 ratio at the bottom? That documents Tammy achieved this ratio in property intake and output and continues to maintain this ratio today. She successfully secured destruction orders on as many items that were booked in, so she booked in as many as she was destroying. This is a huge accomplishment as our secured storage is a finite space, and she has to effectively manage that. In 2018, when I first got here, I tasked Tammy with completing the first comprehensive audit of our property room. It took her almost all year to do it, but she identified over 15,000 pieces of evidence in our property room. That's the mountain that she manages on a daily basis. Community outreach is important and remains a department-wide focus. Allow me to highlight our efforts in addressing the community's mental health needs. In 2018, we established a partnership with Burl Health to assist persons in crisis and/or suffering from illegal drug use and abuse. Today, that relationship remains strong, and Burl staff, they office with us 2 days a week. Burl counselors work alongside our officers and regularly contact persons in crisis and/or experiencing drug abuse challenges. We continue to nurture this relationship and are working to secure handheld devices so that our officers have after-hour outreach options. As we prepare to close, I'd like to highlight a few of our community engagement initiatives. These photos depict your police department at its best. The officers and staff pictured here are real people doing extraordinarily good work. Their calling is public service, and they're really good at it. The top right photo shows a couple of our summer teen engagement program kids working at a local food pantry. Each year, we partner with the school district and identify a group of at-risk junior high kids to mentor. STEP provides kids an opportunity to experience all Branson has to offer: SDC, the Titanic, the track, zip lines, and more. That's all the fun that they have, but the big deal for us is lunchtime each day, where we invite community leaders to share lunch with these kids and talk about character, integrity, leadership, and how to succeed in life. The good part about this program, it's 100% funded by the community. We're very proud of this program. One of our more visible outreach programs is our Citizens Police Academy. There actually may be some of the graduates with us today. A couple of years ago, our Academy graduates formed a 501c3 organization and continue to support and encourage us in many different ways. A few months ago, we recognized the alumni group as our 2021 Pete and Carolyn Waldo Community Partners. Excuse me. Grants and donations are financial force multipliers, and we're continually researching these options for the police department. Let me highlight the Skaggs Legacy Foundation grant. Last year, we received a $20,000 Skaggs Foundation grant to develop the Ozark Mountain Regional Peer Support Team. This team consists of 30 trained first responders standing ready to assist Taney and Stone County first responders experiencing crisis. In its first year, the team assisted some 40 first responders hurdle personal crisis. This program is the first of its kind and includes police, fire, and EMS as one response team. All three of these disciplines respond to crisis scenes and may need assistance during dealing with job stressors. 2 months ago, Sergeant Muckenthaler and I were honored to share this program at the Missouri Crisis Intervention Conference. Here are our 2021 annual award winners. Officer of the Year, Greg Yartz. Supervisor of the Year, Harold Clements. He's over at Dispatch Services. You met her earlier, Tammy Jones, Professional Staff Member of the Year. And as I've already mentioned, our Citizen Police Academy Alumni Association were awarded our Pete and Carolyn Waldo Community Partner Award. This year as a department, we are focused on 3 specific goals. First one is investing in our team, concentrating on training and working to better their capabilities as employees. We're focused on recruiting and retention. And then we're all working to foster an environment where our employees realize value in everything that they do, day in and day out, working for the city. Mr. Mayor and members of the board, before I close, I'd like to publicly thank my team for all they do. They quietly go about providing quality service, and they seek no public recognition or limelight. They are true professionals, and I'm proud to be on their team. This concludes the report, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Chief, I do have a few questions. I know that from the community opinion that there's a high concern of our panhandling and our extended stays, and there have been forever, continually getting worse. I just wanted to publicly share and get your opinion. What I would like to do is personally, as the mayor, go out with maybe the police and somebody from Burrell and address some of those that are currently panhandling. And the purpose of addressing them would be to hear their story, find out why they're where they are today in life, having and listening to what their needs are, having we have a lot of social services to help some of these people, and some may just, if they're educated and know that there's help, they may choose to do that, and we would offer that. those that choose to continue to make a pretty healthy living, who choose not to take advantage of the opportunities, then I know we have the First Amendment, we have all that. I know that we've had a meeting, and I'd like to have more meetings about enhancing the signage of no panhandling. Businesses then have the option to enforce that, right, remove the panhandlers. But I'd like to, especially with all that you're doing, ask you to work, and like I said, I'm willing to do it personally, to go out and address that. The extended stay issue, we've had several meetings. You've been involved with some meetings. Those meetings started out to be, how can we use court enforcement, the hammer, to alleviate our extended stay problems? And so our discussion immediately went into the enforcement side of that. Halfway through the meeting, we brought up the question, well, the enforcement side is one, but then what do you do with them, right? If we have the rights to remove them from extended stays or close down the extended stays, whatever appropriate action there is, now what? So that communication turned into, what can we do to provide a place for them to go, for those that are staying in extended stays? My strong belief is, I have visited several extended stays properties personally. I have to tell you, it is heartbreaking. When I go into a motel room and there's a mom and dad and 4 kids living in a motel room, there's blankets and pillows in the bathtub with 2 of the kids sleeping in the bathtub. That is just no way to live, right? It keeps them out of the rain, it keeps them out of the climate, but that is no way to live or to raise a family. My heart breaks for these kids living in this environment. So in one breath, what can we do to stop this? But I think more importantly is, what do we do with them if they do get kicked out, right? So that's an area that the panhandling and the extended stays are long, long problems. Not only Branson has had, but the country has. But I'm going to try to work with you and your department, with Burrell, with our city codes, and more importantly, come up with solutions of, once they're kicked out on the street, we don't want a bunch of people living under the bridges, right? So those are long-term problems. I just wanted to publicly share that, and I trust I will get all the support I can from you.
You got it from us, and Mayor, I appreciate you attending one of our accountability meetings, and I offer that to all the aldermen to come down monthly. We hold an accountability meeting where we look at all of the issues that are faced by the police department, and we work through not only what's going on, but what the action plans are that we're looking at to correct and mitigate those problems. One of the things that we track on a monthly basis are our panhandling, soliciting. And just to let you know that we as a department are working hand in hand with the community and our property owners. We have secured letters of enforcement from pretty much all of our problem locations, where the property owner has given us a letter that says, enforce the trespassing. I don't want anybody on this corner. The Supreme Court has looked at all of this as a free speech. Standing on the street corner with a sign is perfectly legal unless it ventures into the criminal trespass. That person with the sign is legally able to do that all day long. I can't address the sign no matter what it says. It's free speech. The only enforcement that we can take on the soliciting is when that person steps into the roadway, and then it becomes a public safety issue because of the no crosswalk right there, and we're stepping into traffic. And that's the enforcement action that we take when we can. We also work with Elevate Branson, and Brian has a program over there that we work with. We've assigned a sergeant as our homeless advocate, and that sergeant tracks all of the homeless issues. Probably right now can tell you off the top of his head where most of the homeless camps are in and around Branson. We estimate that right now we probably have a population of 60 to 70. I've heard numbers up to 5,000, and I don't know where those come from, but in talking with the community volunteers that assist this group of this population group, they estimate that maybe 200 come and go over the annual period. So it's something that we're focused on and continue to work on.
Well, let me go ahead and just somewhat embarrass myself. For those that are panhandling to make a living, and I don't know this to be true, I'm told that some of them are making pretty good money. And those that choose not to take advantage of the services and better themselves, First Amendment works two ways. We can't do anything because the panhandler on public property has the First Amendment right. First Amendment right also gives me the opportunity to stand next to them with a sandwich board sign that says, if you feel compelled to contribute, please consider CAM or Elevate Branson.
Sure. And we've worked with Public Works in the past and put up signs that say, here's some alternatives
Yes.
on how you can help people instead of putting money into that
Yeah.
person's pocket.
Okay, thank you, Chief. Does the board have any questions? Sure. Ruth?
First of all, thank you very much, Chief, for your
Thank you.
presentation. At the beginning of your presentation, you had mentioned staffing concerns, and that has been a huge concern. And in this presentation, you had code enforcement under the the police department.
Yes, ma'am.
Can you explain to us a little bit if that has affected your department, losing more staff members and?
So it hasn't negatively impacted staffing-wise because they were code enforcement and didn't respond to 911 police-type activity. What we're trying to accomplish right now, and Mr. Fogel back there in the back of the room, what we're trying to accomplish right now is how can we overlay the information that code enforcement develops over the top of police information? Because if we look at the problem areas that code enforcement is addressing, chances are we can overlay a crime map and get similar hotspots. Does that make sense? And that's the element that we're trying to develop, that bridge, so we can bridge that information between his department and our department. Because that was very successful when it was under the police department, was being able to track that data internally and have those conversations with officers who have problems that they're dealing with. And when we talk about some of these problems, and Mayor, you addressed the enforcement on some of our motels and lodging establishments. Sometimes when we in the police department have a problem, police response may not be the best way to deal with it, but if we work as a bigger entity, as a city, we can find real viable solutions to those problems and not just the hammer that the police department brings.
Okay, so do you feel it's advantageous for code enforcement to not be with the police department, or was it a help to have them in the police department?
No, ma'am, it was a help to have them. They're making great strides right now, but it was a help to have them downstairs.
Okay, thank you.
Any other Alderman questions? Marshall?
Thank you. I want to respect everyone's time, so I'm going to do my best to keep this brief, but I do have a series of questions for you, Chief Matthews. And I want to kind of lay out the groundwork so that we're not talking past each other at all. I think maybe you might have seen some of my perspective in the past. I'm in a little bit of disagreement that crime is lower or declining or things like that, and a lot of my constituents feel the same way. Now, perception isn't always reality, but also statistics, I feel, aren't always reality. So sure.
I don't want to talk over you, but you said perception is not reality. Here's where I'm going to disagree with you. Your perception, Alderman, is your reality. I understand that, and that's what I'm trying to address when I say I have to address the fear of crime, because somebody's perception is their reality.
I agree with that 100%, especially because I live in that neighborhood with the murder, right? And there were also home break-ins and car invasions and all this kind of stuff that makes me feel unsafe in my own bed, right? Let me ask you this quick question. Do you feel that is a reflection on your job performance if crime is up?
That's a tough question because
Because I don't. I'll just lay that
So,
out there.
so let me address it this way. That's a tough question, because if I stand up here and say, we're responsible for the decreases, next year, if we have crime increases, the same guy needs to be here saying, I'm responsible for those increases. So when we talk about crime and where we are with crime, I'm going to jump on a soapbox a little bit here, if I could.
Go ahead.
When we address crime, the biggest driver of our crime is narcotics. When I took the job, I was asked by the Board of Aldermen in an interview, what are you going to do about narcotics in this community? I'm going to do everything I can to get them out. Really, we need to close the border. Every day, my detectives are tracking fentanyl that's coming straight across the Texas border into the United States. That's what's hurting us, are those issues that are out of your control and out of my control.
Chief, if I was a general in an army and you were one of my platoon leaders and you came to me and you said, the enemy has amassed this number of troops, I wouldn't say that was your fault. You know, that's the way I look at this. You know, there was we did this 20 and 20 hiking challenge in 2020. And I was all about it, and I did it in 5 days, and I was promoting it on my social media, and there were all these car break-ins, you know, at the Lakeside Forest and all these things right around that time. And I almost felt like, gosh, am I leading the lambs to the slaughter here by, you know, bringing people to these? And then you all did an investigation and found out it was sort of a ring, essentially. But then after you busted that ring, we had at least one that I remember additional car break-in, you know. Right. So that's where I'm coming from on all this. You know, first off, you'll find as I'm an alderman that I hope that my fellow aldermen have found that even when I come to things with a preconceived notion, I've been able to listen over this past few weeks, and I'm open to hearing, you know, differences of opinion. I'm also not going to be an alderman that's going to sit up here and just praise everybody. I don't feel that's fruitful. I feel that praise needs to be given when praise is deserved. And the fact that we don't hear bad things about the Branson Police Department in this national environment where it is so easy to denigrate our police officers, it speaks volumes to the job that you do.
Thank you. So
I'll say that. I do think that we've been understaffed in the past. That's been a topic of discussion, you know, that kind of thing. I understand that we're a tourist community. I do. And I understand that you want the front porch of Branson to be the prettiest that it can be. And sometimes when talking about the realities of crime can kind of, I don't know, maybe put a bad face on things, you know. But I don't really find it fruitful to ever really come in front of this board and say, these are all the great things that are happening, really. I want to hear what we can always do better, you know. I'll take this, my little statistics thing, you know. 2 murders in 1 year, 1 murder the next, 50% decrease in murders, right? When in a small community like Branson, I don't think we should have any murders at all. Again, not casting any fingers. I don't think it's your fault. You're not the one that did this or led to it. I understand where you're coming from when it comes to the drugs. I think that's a really big issue. But in a lot of ways, I think it's what the drugs lead to that can kind of sometimes be the bigger problems. You know, to me, when we have the car break-ins and the thefts and the things that keep people unsafe. Now, again, drug activity can certainly lead to those people being unsafe. But that's more what I'm looking at, you know, is the things that our citizens and our visitors feel unsafe. If we feel unsafe to go to Lakeside Forest and park our car there, that is a huge issue. And I don't want to ever hear that, you know, crime statistics are down when we're having break-ins at a place that's, you know, such an important thing for our community, you know. So I just wanted to kind of share my perspective on that and hear, you know, what your response was. How often do you look at crime statistics from 20 years ago in Branson? Is that something that you readily look at?
If I had the ability to do that, I could do that, but right now I don't have that ability. We can go back to 2010, 2011 pretty accurately.
Interesting. Because I would think that even if we've seen, you showed that thing of, you know, crime going the last 5 years, I would go out on a limb and say, I almost wonder, though, that if 2017 to 2022 wasn't the highest 5-year period that we've had in a long time in this community. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know.
I can tell you that 2021 was low, right, compared we're trending in our major. I didn't put property crimes in there because property crimes don't align with UCR, and those are the last true totals that I had. But I can tell you that major crime is still trending down.
Sure, sure. So that's where I come from at this. It's not trying to be argumentative or anything like
Yeah.
that. It's just that I think my constituents that, you know, and again, Ward 1, you know, Lakeside is in Ward 1. Murphy Addition is in Ward 1. These theaters that, you know, so that's what we feel, you know, and I think that it's wise to speak to our citizens' concerns because at the end of the day, you know, I want you, if I'm, again, going back to that analogy, if I'm a general and you're facing this platoon and it's this size, I want to get it down where the enemy is gone, you know, and I don't necessarily the enemy is the criminals. The enemy, in some ways, is the crime, you
Sure.
know. And so that's kind of the way I would like to, just as one alderman, view it going forward. Every time you guys come to us, how can we continue to get it down? Not, hey, everything's great. Because sometimes, again, and that's why I said I don't think it's always a reflection on your job performance. Sometimes we can get into the whole thing of like, well, crime is up, so our police are doing a bad job. I don't think that's what we're trying to say when you mentioned the social media. I've been a culprit of talking about it on social media. But again, when people came back at me and said, well, you're just using it as a political issue, gosh, Chief, I feel it, man. When my neighbor calls me and says, we got broken into last night, and the lady who's on drugs is sitting in our living room, you know? So that's just where I come at this. I want our citizens to hear this as well, because there's been a robust discussion. I don't know that any side is wrong or any side, you know, needs to be more educated. I just feel that maybe there's a way that we can find a happy medium between putting our best face forward to our tourists, but also addressing the issues that we feel. And sometimes it's different types of crimes, you know, can kind of affect things differently. You know, they could be running a drug trafficking ring or whatever, and the citizens might not ever feel that, you know. But if their car gets broken into, or if they find somebody in their living room, they do feel that.
Right.
You know, so.
Two points, Alderman, if I could. One, we're living in a world where there's immediate access to crime information. Because if my car gets broken into, chances are it's going to be posted on social media that I'm the victim of a crime. Years ago, we didn't have to deal with that. Now I have to deal with that. And when I talk about you pay me to not only reduce real crime, but to address the fear of crime, that's the struggle that I have, is that one offense or two offense or five offenses is now heard how many times in the community. And that's the struggle we have. And when I put in my narrative, I understand the difference between raw statistical data and the perception of crime. I have to address both. And that's what we work in our community initiatives in trying to get into the neighborhoods and have those conversations. The second point, if I could, that is the way that we assign our resources. I talked about the community policing philosophy and geographic accountability model. We assign our lieutenants to one half of the city. I got one half of the city assigned to one lieutenant, the other half to another lieutenant. Patrol sergeants are assigned a sector for an annual period. I asked that sergeant to track crime over a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week calendar so that one sergeant is the go-to person for all crime matters in that sector. We work as a team, but I hold one person accountable. The officers are assigned sectors or beats on an annual basis so that they can develop those relationships, foster those positive police-community relationships, and work as partners with the community to truly address the issues that are impacting that neighborhood.
Thank you. And if I could just add very briefly one other thing that I maybe want to say to my fellow aldermen. A lot of us have been in this discussion. You know, we want to continue to pay our officers competitively, not just, you know, some number that we're trying to reach, competitively, you know. And part of that, and I think maybe you could address this very briefly, you know, I think that we've often hear when we hear sort of discussion on the national level about policing, that community policing is the best policing. It goes to National Night Out. It goes to exactly what you're talking about. Gosh, I would love a day where every single one of our officers lived in the city limits of Branson, you know. And maybe as a board, we can take that into consideration when we're talking about helping you guys with cost of living, everything like that. Because gosh, I think that'd be a great goal to try to achieve someday.
With all due respect, the national trend right now is running the other direction. Philadelphia just got away from that because they couldn't get cops. Philadelphia had a residency requirement. They couldn't get cops. Some states only mandate that the executive position live in the city. And where I come from in Texas, that's a court ruling that only the executive is required to live in the city. So the trend is to get away from that.
Thank you for your thoughts on that.
Any other aldermen have comments? Ralph?
Yep. Chief Matthews, thank you so much for this presentation. A little bit of military police background, so I kind of have a little understanding of some of the things you're talking about. I just have two questions. For the new recruits that you guys get, what's the number one barrier of entry for them?
Pull your mic closer, yeah.
Can you?
Thank you.
Because you had 60 applicants and then 8 new hires. Like, what's the number one barrier of entry, or where do you see them kind of tripping up and disqualifying, I guess?
So we hire for character, and we believe, Alderman, that we can train pretty much everything else, right?
Right.
The one piece that's typically missing is that character issue. We find credit ratings, we find moral issues, we find criminal issues, we find a myriad of things there. So our focus is on that finding people of character. I can tell you that right now we have 7 or 8 in some form of background that we're hoping to get into a June police academy that would graduate in December. And that's one of the difficulties that we have when we talk about, we hired 8 people last year. That pipeline from hire date to making widgets is about 8 months long, 9 months long. And it takes a while to get them there. So the ones that we put in the academy in January, they're not going to make widgets on their own until probably September.
Right. And I want to compliment you on the character thing, because I think that's a great philosophy, simply because when you have people with character and a great attitude, you're right, everything else is scalable. You can teach them anything because they have that fortitude to want to have that happen. Second question is, how would you suggest that we as a board help you to attract the most qualified people to come into our city and police us?
So in the 3 goals that I discussed, 2022 and beyond, internally, we've identified these as needs within the department. For 2 years, we did not invest in our team because we had COVID, and then we were trying to recoup some of those in 2021, some of those funds. So for 2 years, we really didn't invest in our team. Our team has training needs, and they want to improve their lot in life and abilities and all of that. So we're addressing those issues monetarily through providing funds for training. We're seeking what they need to make themselves better, and we're investing in that. Focusing on recruiting and retention, that's a bigger issue than just compensation. That's creating a culture where, as you can see by the last one down there, trying to create value in everything that they do. So when our employees go home at the end of the night and they put their head on the pillow, they tell themselves, I know I did a good job today. That's either because the supervisor patted them on the back. You, as the Board of Aldermen, have said, great job, that's the way we want things done. Hold us accountable when we make mistakes, but as a body, we as the city need to realize these people are doing their best every day to make this place, make the city a better place to live, work, and play.
And then one other comment, wouldn't you say that before show of force, just presence of officers is probably one of the most valuable things that we could provide for our city when it comes to a safety perspective? Because if you're more visible in the community, and your officers are, then those guys may be deterred from, doing a little mischievous activities, wouldn't you say?
Yes. There are many, Alderman, there are many convenience stores across the country that train their clerks to address everybody that came through the door, that comes through the door. Hi, welcome. And they do that because now I have eyes on that person. Right. And I've put it out, I'm looking. But you talk about a presence is better than the use of force. me take you back to some of our protests out on 76. And if you'll remember, we put officers dressed just like me out there to deal with the crowd. Lieutenant Jones was out there as our commander on scene. He was right there with them, dressed exactly like he is right now. What you didn't see was the Highway Patrol Special Response Team standing in the shadows with all the tactical gear, because we wanted to handle our residents dressed like we do every day, because I truly believe that's the best and the first approach that we should always take.
Absolutely. And it builds trust in
Yes.
the community. Absolutely. Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
Great conversation. Any other alderman?
Chief, how would you rate, I mean, this may seem like a silly question, but overall morale in the department as of today? Would you say everybody's excited about, I mean, just, I guess, overall morale?
So I think that overall morale, I know that overall morale is pushing upward right now. They're looking forward to where we are as a city. They're looking forward to the possibility of the compensation and the work study coming back and realizing we're making too many widgets per person, and that staffing may be addressed. But the real side of their fears with our staffing right now, you know, because you're in the business, we're about to get busy.
Yeah.
And our officers are having to backfill open positions, take a day off, and not take a day off, but work the streets for us and get paid extra, because our staffing is down. You know, when I lose an officer, just a couple of 3-4 weeks ago, going into the contracting business, because he doesn't have to work nights, he's making more money, doesn't have to work weekends. I lost one that opened up a local restaurant. You know, how can I, as a police chief, say we can do better when those opportunities are out there, right? And that's the reason why, if you look at the goals, realizing value in everything that we do, it's bigger than just compensation.
Awesome, thank you.
Chief, let me jump in here real quick. Just so there's a clear understanding. Would you share how many openings we have in our police department today?
I believe that number is 13.
And out of that 13 are the ones that are currently in some form of training?
No. The 3 that I say are sitting in the academy, they're being paid, but they're not making widgets. So that
those three
position
are
is
not in-
filled,
Yeah.
but
So
they're
if
not
those
making
3 were active today, would that number go from 13 to 10?
that number would stay 13.
That's what I wanted to clarify.
Yeah,
So-
I don't overhire.
Yeah. So we have 3 in the academy and we have 6?
7 or 8 in some form of background right now, that I'm hoping to get 7, maybe 6, if we can get 6 into the June academy.
So getting them into the June academy, they're going to make widgets 9 months later.
Yes.
So if we hired these 3 that are in academy, the 7 that are going through background, if we hired those 10, we would still be 13 officers down.
If we hire the 7, no. 13 minus 7, that's what we would have as far as openings. We still have announcements out for lateral entry officers, and I have the ability to pay above and beyond what the entry salary is based on experience and training and all that stuff. So I can bring a lateral entry officer in that's sworn. I can bring them in at a higher pay rate than the entry level. The problem, we're not getting those applicants. And when I talk to my colleagues, I just had a conversation 2 weeks ago with Paul Williams up in Springfield. He has a lateral entry program. He's not getting the applicants either. The Highway Patrol opened up a lateral entry program last year, had 3 applicants.
Mr. Mayor, could I piggyback on that real quick?
Sure.
There's been a lot of discussion about this, but sometimes I get frustrated when discussion happens, but then it doesn't come to fruition. Have we ever reached out to, like, Portland officers, officers in places, San Francisco? I mean, have we actually done that? I know we've kind of said that, you know.
Yes, we have. All of us, our lieutenants and myself and Assistant Chief Schmidt, are all members of national organizations, and we routinely share that information. Chief Schmidt right now is up in Quantico, Virginia, going through the National FBI Academy. He's passing out business cards. Our crime analyst is up in Hershey, Pennsylvania right now, passing out business cards.
Man, I wonder if our Chamber of Commerce couldn't help us with something like this. You know, I mean, make a video. Wouldn't you like to work in the most, police-friendly city in America? I mean,
We're working right now with one of Chief Martin's employees on a video, a recruiting video, and our media person inside the department is very frustrated because if you follow our social media page, last week I pulled the plug on it, but before that I was requiring a hiring social media post every 2 days. I want a new face every 2 days, and we did that for about 2 weeks. And we're still hitting all of the points that HR hits on every job announcement. Indeed, all of the national Missouri law enforcement jobs, all of that is posted out there. We have personal relationships with all of the police academies in our region, and we reach out to them every day. Not every day, but I mean on a regular basis.
thank you.
Any other aldermen? Chief, I would like to tell you, from the bottom of my heart, I am so appreciative for what you and every single officer does in Branson, Missouri. I am very proud to be the mayor of a city that respects, appreciates, and shows their appreciation for every one of the officers. Your officers deserve to be treated that way. I am just proud that our citizens acknowledge that.
They do it each and every day, Mayor, because of people like you and the community that appreciates them. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That concludes
One more.
your annual report. Now we're moving on to the presentation of the overview of the police department new facility, design, process, timelines, and possible funding solutions or sources.
So this is kind of new information for maybe some on the board and a refresher for others on where we are with the police department and the new police department and moving forward. So if I hold it the other way, just a reminder on where the property is. 5.5 acres, right below Tanger and the Mountain Coaster on 76. The blue area there represents kind of a basic footprint. If you'll remember, we had a contract with an architectural firm that was working on construction documents when COVID hit. We'd already gone through a needs assessment for the building, finding out how big all that stuff the building should be. And then they laid out kind of a basic footprint. This is not the original footprint that they came up with, but let me draw your attention to the 3 lines facing the traffic circle in front of the blue lines there, or the big blue building area there. That's a drain hole that's 5 feet in diameter that goes down some 20, 30 feet and drains into Roark Creek. We have to position
Just for clarification, is this the line you're referring to?
right there where those 3 points meet, right in front of the building.
Right here?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
It's 5 foot in diameter, about 20, 30 feet down, and it's a drainage area that drains into Roark Creek. We can move that, but it's going to cost a lot of money to move it. So in trying to save money, we need to position the building wherever it ultimately goes, not on top of that.
Got it.
So the needs assessment that was conducted by the first architectural firm basically told us you need about 30,000 square feet for the building. And we worked with them on a layout, and this is kind of basically the layout of that building and where that square footage would go. Haven't designed a whole lot of buildings in my life, but in talking with the architectural firm, all of these numbers include hallways, they include the wall space, all of that. So the 30,000 square foot is the total building, including hallways and storage buildings and conference rooms and everything there. So when we break it out, remember Our intent is to have a community/emergency management facility so that if the community has a need to go and meet, this building would have public access entry and the ability for the public to go and use a community room. That will double as the emergency management center for the city. God forbid that we have a need to stand up an emergency management center. This is the building where it will occur. So this is kind of the breakdown in discussions with the previous architectural firm on where the percentage of the building would lay. And if you look at the dispatch, we're still in conversations with the Taney County Ambulance District. Chief Kuntz is very interested in partnering with us and housing his dispatch center with us. I've been in contact with Sheriff Daniels. He's interested as well, but Mayor, quite honestly, that's a discussion between the board and the commission on whether or not that would be feasible to bring Taney County in to partner with us as well.
But I'm
in a
hearing you
dispatch
say
center.
you think it's a good idea.
I think it's a great idea.
Taney County Sheriff thinks it's a good idea, so now it's up to the politicians to get out of your way.
Thank you. So when we look at timelines for, okay, today we're secured the funds and we're moving forward. Here's the basic timeline. The first step in any of our projects always needs to be secure the funding sources. Whatever that looks like, secure the funding sources. RFQ for the first initial architectural design is about a 6-month process. Takes about 3 months to get the board before you, the contract for that architectural firm. The design phase of the construction documents, needs assessment and all that, it's about a 12-month process to go from we have a contract to now we have documents that we can send to a contractor. 3 months for a construction contract, that's getting it before you, the board, and then finding that general contractor that's going to come in and build the building, and then an estimate of, say, a 2-year build. So when you do the math on that, we're about 3 years out from the first day that we say we have money in the bank to go forward.
Excuse me, that looks like 4 years. 2 years for the construction.
4 years.
Yeah,
You're
4
right.
years total.
4 years.
4 years total to open the police department after we've secured a funding source.
Right. The next part of the discussion is going to bring that home. Before I go forward, the finance director, Keith Francis, and myself all worked on this presentation to get you this information. Now let's talk funding sources. Finance is already doing the research to find grant opportunities. We've had a discussion about specific building construction models that open the door for us to get federal grant dollars through FEMA if we build the building in a way that it also serves as a bad weather tornado type shelter. So that if we build that building, we can get federal dollars for certain parts of that building. Finance is researching those options right now. Finance also has an RFP out for a grant consultant that will come and help us seek grant opportunities through the federal government, through state sources and that. And they will collect their consulting fees through those grant applications and awards. But that RFP, if I understand right, Stacy, is about out the door. May 30th, it's due back May 3rd, okay. So let's talk about another funding source, public-public partnerships. That's TCAD, possibly the PSAP from Taney County coming over and joining us. Stone County has a standalone 911 district that works very good. I've been in contact with them on how it works operationally, logistically, works like a champ, all of them there in one building, in one room, dispatching all police and fire resources, EMS in Stone County from one dispatch center. Public-private partnerships, there's an opportunity to maybe go beyond what we as a city have typically looked at when we're talking public-private relationships to build buildings. We have no place in Branson that lends itself to outdoor public type celebrations and I'm thinking about a 911 celebration. Chief Martin and his staff and me and my staff every year at 911 go over to C of O for their 911 ceremonies. We do that for two reasons. One, they're a regional partner and we need to be with them. Number two, we don't have a place in Branson to hold those kind of ceremonies. Public-private partnerships, I would love for this facility to have some place like that, funded through the public, through the purchase of maybe landscape bricks with somebody's name, a corporate name on it, so that we can fund that part. Have a sitting area that's available with Wi-Fi so that tourists come into town and they need a place to go to hook up to Wi-Fi or whatever. Now they have a workstation and a comfortable, safe environment to do that. Public-private partnerships can fund that part of the building. Enhanced revenue sources. Mayor, I know that's something you and the board are continually looking at, how to increase our resources to make Branson a better place to live, work, and play. So, in short, our public safety sales tax sunsets in 20 years. And if we're looking for a 20-year bond, that decision needs to be made pretty soon. And quite honestly, I think that when you look at the books, it's going to take other opportunities to help us fund this building other than just what we have right now in our budget. And that's why finance is already looking at that. They're already scouting the grant consultants through the RFP to come in and help us to get those funding sources. That's it right there. Just done.
Any any alderman have any questions? Sure, Marshall.
Could you give us the 30-second or 1-minute reason we need this new building?
Need what?
I've been downstairs. I know the boxes are in the old cells. I've heard a bit of it. Could you just lay that out quick, briefly of why we need this?
Alderman, the space downstairs, I'm told it's 9,500 square feet. But part of that 9,500 square feet includes the boiler system downstairs. I had a lieutenant that was working in a space that was not very big at all, and he had to lean sideways to go past his desk to get behind his desk. We're packed in there. And when I talk about creating an environment where the employees feel like they're valued and they have value in everything that they do, sometimes that workspace creates some of that. It's also a need for the public to be able to interface with the police department in a community room is something that makes us a stronger community. Having the ability to have that in-house does that. It's also part of our recruiting. If we had that building, it would be a great asset to say, hey, we've got a new building, come work with us.
Ah, that was a good one. That was a good ending.
And a
Yeah.
little, and a morale booster too.
Huge morale booster.
I keep bringing that
when
up.
Mayor, when we meet with the public safety group that we talk about, I'm asked in that meeting every time, how's equipment? I'll put our equipment up against any other department around. It's the facility, right?
I like that because I've always said I'm a personnel over buildings guy. And if we're building a building when we still need to get you guys paid, boy, that gives me a lot of heartburn. But I liked that last thing you said, that it actually can increase the possibility of us getting new officers, All right, well, you answered my question then.
Other alderman comments, questions? Chief, would you go back to the previous slide? And I'll show my ignorance here real quick. The architectural design phase, what's the process to secure the funding sources without knowing what cost we're shooting for?
So that's one of the things that Keith Francis and his crew kind of help us scout out. We reach out to those partners that we already have, and we talk about, hey, what's the estimate right now, square footage-wise, to build this building? We get those numbers, and we bring them to you, and we say $400 a square foot, $350 a square foot, whatever that is, and we tell you.
Do we have
Real-
that figure today?
We do. Real dollars in the end, we don't know what that is. We know what the estimates are.
Do we
but
have
real
just a
dollars in the end.
ballpark within 10 million?
12, 13?
12, 13 million?
Yeah, and that's when you look at this last slide down at the bottom, it talks about that construction cost doesn't include the $1.5 million for FF&E, furniture, fixtures, and equipment for that building.
How many square footage are we looking at?
30,000.
30,000.
30,000.
30,000.
You were out of the room when we had this
You know,
conversation.
Did that happen when I went to the bathroom? Okay.
Alderman Cooper, when I say 30,000, you say, well, Jeff, you're in 9,500 right now, and you're seeking 30,000. This is a 30, 40-year building. And what are we as a city going to look like in 30 to 40 years?
Yeah.
And what is the growth potential of the police department in that time frame? So we're building for today for extended life 34 years out, 40 years out. So.
Yeah, I get that.
I was looking for Chief Martin because he would be able, is he here? Oh, hi, Chief. I'm normally looking for you in white. You don't need to get up. This is going to be a sarcastic comment. You were able to achieve a fire department with an estimated physical structure with an estimated budget of $3.5, $4 million. Would you share some of your insight with the chief of? Just kidding. This is very enlightening. We all need to know this. Wow.
So the comment to Chief Martin, and I get it, I rag on him all the time as well. When we talk, let me draw your attention to field operations. 22.3% of the facility right now on paper, if we were to build, that's what I would recommend. Field operations is our biggest operational division. That's patrol ops. But it also includes our property and evidence room. Right now, we're off-site. We have a storage facility here that we process and hold until we can take it to our off-site. Most of our evidence is off-site in a building that's probably, I don't know, 1,500, 2,000 square foot. That's off-site. So we want to bring all of that in.
Yeah. I know there's a lot of support that we've been talking about this for a long, long time. I know the community was very supportive when they passed the public safety tax with this in mind.
Mayor, if I could sum up, here's what
Sure.
we're doing as directors within the different departments. Finance is still searching to find funding sources so that we can come back to the board and say, here you go. Here's some funding sources. Give us the go-ahead, the green light to move forward. We're not looking for recommendations today.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
telling you, we're already looking for that.
Yeah. I know I've been down to the police department several times, and to say it's snug would be an understatement.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is that all the items there, Madam Clerk?
Yes.
I mean Assistant City Administrator, interim, acting. Let me open this up. Is there anybody in the audience here wishing to get up and address anything we've heard today? Media? You want to come up to the mic and give your name, address, social security number?
Should we send Marshall down to work the camera for you? No.
I have experience.
Hi,
Hi.
I'm Shoshana. I'm with KY3. My question is going back to the annual crime report, specifically for the chief, though.
Sure.
Just wondering if you could go over some of the property crime numbers. I saw that those were the highest compared to crimes against persons and crimes against society. So kind of going through those crimes and what you're seeing as the trends in the city.
I don't know that we've ever had a meeting where we allowed the media to ask a specific question.
asked.
What a
Talk
precedent.
about openness.
Keeps me from buying ice cream later for an on-camera interview out there. So the question was, can I talk about the property crimes because they're up compared to the other crimes? Property crimes in Branson are always going to be up. I talked about the relatively low number of violent crime. That's the society of Branson. That's the community that we live in. Our biggest crime driver are stealing, theft offenses. Always has been, probably always will be. And part of that goes back to the conversation that I had with Alderman Howden up there about the drug culture and finding ways to provide for my habit. So it's, most of those are property, not property crimes, but theft and stealing, and not so much of house or business break-ins.
So I can see because of the drug, I mean, it really does, a lot of it stems from the drug issues. Desperate people do desperate things, right? If any of us were hungry, didn't have a place to stay, we needed to get our next fix because it truly is a sad, sad addiction. But if you're in that position, what would you do? The sentimental side, you're down on your luck, you don't have or haven't seeked out the resources to help, you have a family to feed. Seriously, what would you do? So a lot of that, in my opinion, a lot of that boils down to the focus on the root, and a lot of the root would be the drugs.
One of the things that we know in the police department, I didn't bring it out in this report, I talked about it last year, and that's our repeat offenders. Last year I shared that in 2020, we had 35 repeat offenders that accounted for well over 80 offenses. Those are people that we contact, issue citations, arrest, and then reoffend before they are processed through the court systems. And when I say, when you ask what can you do to help, I said close the border. Another thing is the personal recognizance bond systems that are out there right now. We arrest, we take to jail. Chances are they're out before we finished our reports because of the personal recognizance that the courts are pushing right now for criminals.
Chief, is comment still a thing?
Yes, it is, and we're a member of that, and we work. We probably work with our federal partners more than COMET, but we're a member of COMET. I'm on the executive board there.
I know a few years ago, whenever it was, when the state came out and said on these personal recognizance bonds, how disheartening it must be for the police department to arrest the same people for doing these crimes over and over and over and over. That has to just take the wind out of your sails.
Yes.
Chief, I noticed aggravated assaults that was a pretty high number, right, on the slide?
57, 68 last year. Yeah.
What are some of the top things that fall into that? I mean, is some of that marital disputes? Is that skew that
So
number?
that's part of it, and we classify aggravated assaults either by the weapon or by the classification of injury.
Okay.
So if it's serious bodily injury, things like that, it's an aggravated assault, or if it's a weapon that is capable of causing serious bodily injury or death that is displayed.
So that
used.
puts it in a different
Yes, in a
classification.
different category, right. And one of the things about those type of crimes here in Branson, I talked about earlier in the narrative, most of those are relational, where the suspect is quickly identified and apprehended.
Okay. I was just curious.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, I'll tell you, speaking for myself, I think this was a very healthy discussion. I think it was very informative. I appreciate your report. I appreciate the aldermen for asking the questions they did. I appreciate the media for getting involved with participating in the meeting. If there's nothing else, I would entertain a motion. We're done with the business. Yeah. I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Second.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to adjourn. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Pose
Aye.
same sign. Ayes have it. Thank you very much for attending our meeting.